how did you first get involved with solutions and engineering, and what was your backstory, prior to that?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting story, this one. I was just as a young kid always fascinated with real estate, property. Mum and dad were big into the property investment sort of space, and I just saw it as an amazing wealth generation tool. Even from a young age, I went, this is definitely the goal. You got to have some property, get some rental properties, etc. So as soon as I actually graduated school, and when everyone else was at schoolies for the week, I started in a real estate that very week. So it was the real estate that Mum was the administrator for in little old Noosa on the Sunshine Coast. Yep. So we had 350 luxury holiday homes that we'd rent out. We'd do all the sales, etc. So that background, that was 5 years doing that sort of thing, and towards the end ended up being a big part of the business development for the firm, really focusing on guest experience and things like that, which I loved. Anyway, lo and behold, one day this guy comes in, he stays with us, number of issues in just as property is, leaks, etc. I thought nothing more of it. Then I finished my degree, moved to Brisbane with the degree done and a few interviews lined up. On the way to one of these interviews, I'm just standing at the lights near a bridge and about to run the lights, going, I better not. If I fall over, I'm going to end up a mess for this interview, and it's not going to be a good impression. And then this guy pulls up next to me on a Lime scooter, and I look at him, I go, geez, you look familiar. And he goes, shit, you look familiar. And we sort of exchange details and go, I remember you from Noosa. He was one of the guys that stayed with us in this property.
Yeah.
So he's gone, what are you here for, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, look, I finished this international business degree. I'm looking for work. And he gave me his card, and we didn't have anything at the time, but he said, look, send us your details. I'd still be really keen. And I ended up interviewing and starting with him the following week, even though he didn't have a role specifically for me. And that's morphed into, I was the junior business development manager. I just got really passionate into the body corporate space, the compliance space behind it as well. And I think in my mind, I saw a lot of what we do is trying to protect owners in the long run in regards to their asset. So maintaining this real estate asset, for a lot of people, it's the most expensive thing they own is their unit, their house, whatever it is. And to see so many of them just take such a naive or negligent approach to the maintenance, I think really resonated with me. So I've loved what I've been doing. I've progressed now to the national sales executive role. So I oversee New Zealand, Australia, the work we do on the Pacific Islands as well. It's just been awesome. Yeah.
That's cool. I like the part about how your parents encouraged you to get into real estate. Did they have that same sort of upbringing with their folks, or how did they sort of discover real estate?
It was really interesting, actually. So my father, half my background is Italian. So my father is an immigrant Italian. So his parents, my grandparents, came over to Australia in the 1950s post the war. Absolutely poor as anything, on a boat, didn't have much. And just worked their entire lives basically to try and give their kids a better chance. And Dad was one of 6 boys, so it was a big family of males. And they instilled in my father this incredible work ethic to go, you need to save money, you need to put a roof over your head, get ready for your family, etc., and be the real workhorse. And to the point, their work ethic, even as kids on school holidays, Dad and his brothers would be working in the veggie garden. They'd be doing all sorts of things around the house. And I say to people, you've never understood the value of things and the value of hard work until, like my father, he was made to straighten the nails that came out of a pallet so that his father could use them again for something else. And I just went, wow, that's hard work ethic.
that is hard work ethic.
That's resourcefulness.
But what we're trying to teach kids these days is like, I remember talking to the kids, like they watched Bob the Builder, and like one of his things was reduce, reuse, and recycle. So recycling nails makes a whole lot of sense. You see so much waste on building sites now where they just throw all the good stuff away.
And the consumer's paying for it. The tradies just write it off. Go, I need an extra bag of nails, a thing of glue. That no wasteful mentality, I think, is really strong in a lot of the immigrant cultures, particularly if they did it hard to sort of start off. They weren't lucky. They had to make their pennies really stretch. So that's sort of ingrained in Dad. And Dad, when he left home, he worked 3 jobs to just get his first house, pay it off, pay it down as fast as he could at 17% interest rate.
Shit. Wow.
Which, again, today we've got so many people, even in my generation, going, I can't do it, never going to own it. 6%, 7%, and there's
17.
the generation before me willing to do it at 17%. Yeah,
I remember my old man talking about finance back in the 70s, and I think it was like 23%.
Wow.
They had this thing called bridging finance, and it was on smaller amounts, but it was higher interest, and it was like 23%, just fucking ridiculous.
It's nuts, hey, to think that they still had that goal, though. They still reached that goal. So I think it was very much goal orientated, and unfortunately now we live in a society where everyone's like, I need it today. How do I get it today? Oh, great, credit, afterpay, all these other options.
It up, mate.
We're coming into Christmas now, and imagine what's going to get spent on presents and all sorts of outings that people truly can't afford, but they want it right now.
That's the problem, mate. We're all like, now.
That's it. Consumer society.
Yeah. So what's your role sort of encompass from, like, what's a normal day? Do you have a normal day or a normal week?
Wow.
How does it all pan out?
A normal week is usually at least one trip to the airport at the moment. So my role encompasses obviously all of Oz and NZ. So under me now falls somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 clients. And by clients, I mean like individual building managers, strata managers, body corp managers who we do work for. So my day is very much a blend of meeting someone in a cafe somewhere, having a chat about the services we offer, the buildings they look after, and just trying to educate the industry in terms of compliance. But rather than doing it like as one big office presentation, we take a very personal approach. And my goal is to get to know everyone that I work with and all the clients in the industry.
Someone's tapped into your personality and thought you need to sit down one-on-one with these people.
I think it's very much, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love presenting on a stage and have done some massive gigs as well this year in that space. But I just think you get to the more human element when you're just sitting down over coffee having a chat. And what I really enjoy is especially this year, I've actually been the first conversation and the first chat that some of these guys new into the industry have ever had with someone from the strata or body corporate industry. So to be there for their first week and welcome him in as a mate more than, hey, I'm a salesperson, let me sell you what we do. It's more just going, welcome to one hell of an industry. Strap in, it's going to be massive, but you're going to do really well at this.
So I want to know what you define as industry, because I mean, and I see like active in what we do as being part of an industry, and I think there's this thing called the body corporate industry that isn't particularly well served on a overall. It's made up of a whole lot of little like companies and businesses that service it, but there's not really an overarching, sort of national body or anything like that. So what industry are you referring to there?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's I'd say 90% of our work falls in that body corporate unit titled layered sort of properties where you've got people living above and below each other, bit like prison, except these guys chose to buy in. I don't know if they got the better deal. I mean, one, you get meals brought to you, one you don't, so I'm not sure. But it's that sort of industry that we're really primarily focused on, and it started almost 40 years ago. So we turned 40 as a company next year. So our founder's son now runs it, but the founder was a structural engineer that worked a lot with body corporate type buildings back in the sort of 60s, 70s, and then they brought in the requirements to have sort of long-term plans for your maintenance. And this is all because you got owners that go, oh, this is great, my 4 walls look amazing, I put paintings up, the curtains are great, whatever, and they just forget about the rest of the building,
stuff the rest of it, it's only care about their little box.
That collective mindset of ownership just doesn't extend to the common property, the lawns, the pools, the car parks, etc.
Everything that's holding up their particular box in the building. Because I first became aware of solutions and engineering around that time when the long-term maintenance plan thing came in. I think it was about 2010. And so you guys became one of these options that was like, you need to have a plan. And so there was and then a whole lot of companies were popping up at the time, and it was like, shit, it became its own little industry, the long-term maintenance planning industry.
It did, and we were really fortunate in around that 2009-10 period. They used to hold this conference on the Gold Coast called the Griffith Strata Conference, and the parliamentarians for NZ at the time actually travelled over to that conference and met with my current boss and our owner now, James Freeston, who had become an expert in this space because he'd started doing these long-term plans since 1997 across Australia. So everyone sort of went, you need to sit down and have a chat to this guy. He can help you write this legislation and make it make sense, and then actually make it practical. we've got all this legislation these days that seems amazing on paper, and then people go, it's too hard, forget about it. No one actually can enforce it or live by it. So the goal was, I think, for the NZ guys coming over, was to get a really broad understanding of how is this applied in Australia already, how's it work in the US, etc., and try and, I guess, cut out any of the things that didn't work for that time.
Yeah, because do you know where your business model came from? Was it sort of from overseas, or was it internally within Aussie? Or,
it was almost just born out of necessity. So we were one of the first companies to start doing these reports when Queensland was the first state ever to bring them in. Even before the states had them and anywhere else, they went, as a government, they went, okay, people will not look after buildings unless you force them to, and they can't afford to pay it overnight. We have to plan it over 10, 15, 30 years, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
So that necessity came in legislation, and James, our boss, went, we can absolutely do this. We're all ex-builders, engineers, etc., with the trade background. We know what things cost. And again, it was very much that mindset of, let's have interpersonal rapport with our clients. Let's not just market the hell out of it and put it on billboards. Let's actually go see people and get down to, hey, I can help you with your portfolio. The legislation's due next year. Let's start getting these buildings ready for it, you know. And it's just morphed. Each region we've gone to, they've brought in that same legislation or something else, and that's how we've just grown as a business. Yeah.
So you end up being ahead of the curve, where you go, well, we've already done this. It's easy to replicate.
Yeah.
Yep. The what you said before about the type of people that are within the company, like what sort of people do you employ, and for what sort of roles?
It's interesting. I mean, it depends on each region as well. Some, like I was saying, some regions like NZ, we want people that truly understand the climate, the buildings, what the life cycle's like. Can you realistically get trades to do certain things? We get all these people wanting to put things in plans where it's like a tradie's coming out to do a $300 job, and he's a plumber, and I'm like, he's not hopping out of bed for that money, let alone is he coming to do one little job. Do you know what I mean? So it's that reality of where they work and live is really important to us. The skill sets themselves can vary. Some of our best guys have been carpenters, even ex-painters that are just fantastic at estimating work, because that's what they do for a lot of that job. We've had some amazing ex-builders, get them off the tools, don't need to wear a construction hat anymore, so they can walk around freely. Project managers, quantity surveyors, that sort of skill set where they're used to working with quantities and buildings, but a more practical application than a guy that sits at a desk and just drafts up, the architectural plans. We want someone that understands access. Okay, the building's on a difficult street. We're going to need scaffolding, swings, booms, etc. to actually get this job painted, so that the owners in 10 years' time, when they actually decide, okay, time to paint the building, that has all been allowed for. Yeah,
and I'd imagine, like, with a lot of the plans that are being put together probably in the last 4 or 5 years, probably haven't accounted for the inflation as it is now. So like it's a guide, right? It's not necessarily a hard and fast thing. Like, but I mean, you've got to try and get those plans as accurate as possible, because body corps are trying to fund them and put that money into their budget every year.
And there's a few things with that's made it challenging over the last few years. Like you said, that inflation's just been phenomenal. What I think is one good thing for the NZ body corp industry is that the legislation here is that every 3 years it must be reviewed. The long-term plan, that is.
Is that not the same?
No, other regions they're every 5 years. Other regions you just have to have one, but whether you follow it or you prop a desk up with it really doesn't matter to the government. I think NZ's really, again, that's a practical application going, let's not just tick that box, let's make this a useful financial tool for these bodies corporate. So at least every 3 years we can catch that inflation and go, sorry guys, obviously COVID happened, the world happened. Your cost to paint now is here, but thankfully, again, you're still 8 years away from when we thought you would need to paint anyway, so you can adjust those figures.
Do you think people that buy into and own apartments actually underestimate how much it costs to maintain these buildings? Because we present a lot of long-term maintenance plans on behalf of and people say, holy bloody hell, I had no idea it cost that much. But then we say to them, look, if you divide it by the amount of units, you probably spend more on a house out in the suburbs, but I still think some people just they sort of think, oh, I bought an apartment, I'm good. They don't understand the total upkeep of an apartment building.
It is, and it's hard. I think a lot of people, unit owners, I find, are generally two different types of people. One, and I guess it's demographic related, is they can't necessarily afford that freehold or free title home, so they go on great units are going to be a good option. Often it's people starting off in the property industry, young families, etc. So they often leverage everything just to get that one unit and think, great, I've got it now, that's it. Not realizing that, you know, you might spend 5% of that purchase price each year just maintaining it. In some of these bodies corporate, because it's got 6 lifts, a swimming pool, it's got 3 levels of parking, etc. as well. So there's that group of people that just are not prepared for those extra expenses. And as a former real estate agent, I can say as well, you're not motivated when you're selling the property to go, there is some hidden cost, guys. You know, it's very much like, oh, it's amazing, it's this price, it's $499 for the unit, and you get a swimming pool, 6 lifts, etc. You're not explaining to them, by the way, you got to pay for all of this sort of thing. Yeah.
Was the background of being a real estate agent helpful in this role for you?
It was and it wasn't. I mean, it certainly opened my eyes to a broader aspect of what body corporate particularly is and what that property ownership looks like. I mean, as a real estate agent, and even the holiday property work we did was very much, your relationship with the client is 45 days while it sells, basically. After that, not my problem.
Yep.
Or if it's the luxury holiday homes, again, we only had people in there for a couple of weeks and then they'd piss off and it'd be gone and someone else is in. So this role's shown me, my God, the life cycle of a building and all the steps it goes through, all the work that gets done, the emotion behind it is phenomenal. Again, you know, talking costs is a big one. You go to some of these AGMs and each person should have security sort of scenarios. Yeah.
That's the E word there, the old emotion thing, like, because we're dealing with people's homes. And I've talked about this on a couple times, like, it's different to where they work. You know, they don't really give a shit about where they work, as long as their desk and their chair is comfortable and there's a coffee or whatever. But when you're talking about people's homes, man, the emotions do start to come out, because that's their safe place, their biggest investment, like you said before. And you know, some people's the decision making around committees at times can be affected by that emotion, when sometimes they just need a bit of a straight shot down the middle. But you know, it's human nature, isn't it? You know, it
is. It's hard, and it's one of the first things we teach our guys, the building inspectors, when they go to site, is go look for those biases, and it's usually around the price, sort of, or that expenses, the finances of the building. Because you'll get chair people that take us around the building and go, don't look at any of that. Just just put that in. Nope, don't worry about that. That's the owner's problem, etc. And they really try and thin out what the long-term budget needs to be, or what the outgoings for the building are, so that it's, one, their levies are lower, or two, they might be trying to sell, so it looks more attractive as well. And then you get the complete other aspect of owners, where someone will walk us around on site, they want to put everything in, we're going to repaint that, we're replanting that, we want a pool, put a pool in, etc., thinking that they can shove all these extra services in, and collectively 100 unit owners might help pay for it for them, you know. So it is. I think it is hard. What really gets me, and what I'm passionate about advocating for, is just planning the maintenance that your building needs just to stay upright. Essentially, is at the end of the day, there's too many scenarios where owners have become bankrupt or financially ruined because they're stuck in a building that is falling to the ground. You can't throw away a property title, like we know. It's your problem forever. Those levies are debt recoverable by law as well, and so if the building ends up with $1 million or $3 million worth of urgent or needed maintenance, that council goes, guys, you need to have this done, or you can't live there anymore, you're stuck with that burden as a group of owners.
Totally, man. And what you said before as well about that, the life cycle of a building, I think if people were more aware that they're actually responsible for a slice of that life cycle, you know, and the decisions that they make during their time in the jersey, so to speak, to use a poor rugby analogy, but you know, they're responsible for, you know, the next sort of 20-30 years of that building being around. And sometimes, you know, there could be cases where, you know, retrospectively they might be sued for decisions that have been made, and you know, you've got to be very careful. Absolutely.
There's a number of cases actually, and it's really prevalent in the United States, where the exact scenario you've said. So a chairperson's been involved, they've made a number of decisions, they've sold out, they thought it was great, they're sitting on a beach somewhere, and someone comes up and serves them papers to go, excuse me, that building you sold out of 7 years ago, turns out all these defects, water problems, etc. We can clearly see you were the reason none of this got done, and you're now going to be held liable, so here's your date in court, you know. And that Miami building's a good example too, that collapsed unfortunately a few years ago. Plenty of owners sold out of that. The committee walked away from it. The strata manager walked away from it, and that just recently settled for $1.02 billion.
Shoot.
Keeping in mind that most bodies corporate and most businesses have a public liability payout of up to $20 million at best, man. That's a shitload.
It's a bit of a shortfall there. We need to figure out how the hell would they fund something like that.
That's phenomenal, hey. 98 people died, really, really unfortunate. I think 104 apartments ended up completely collapsing as well. And again, it was all negligence around maintenance. You know, they had an engineer's report 3 years earlier that said, guys, you got a problem now. It was amazing. It made it 3 years into the middle of COVID, and then that one night, it collapsed, unfortunately.
It's amazing with these vertical villages, you know, these huge bloody buildings.
Yep.
When something goes wrong, it goes really wrong, eh? You know, like in a big way. Like you look at Greenfell when that happened back in 11 or 12, whenever it was, you know, that was a massive disaster. You know, and these things are so visible.
Yes.
You know, you see those ones that catch on fire, like in China or over in Europe and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, there's no escaping it. Like, they're a disaster when something goes wrong, eh? It's you don't want to be near them.
The sad thing with the Grenfell Towers was that they'd known for a while that cladding product was originally, its original design was sign writing, and it's what real estate agencies use as the for sale sign. And some bright spark had an idea, go, let's slap this on a building and save having to paint it. We'll just cover the building in this shit instead. And
what can possibly go wrong?
Absolute match head. Yeah. It just went off, man.
Yeah. If we go back to the business side of things, like you obviously do the long-term maintenance plans, but there's a whole lot of other services that you guys provide as well. Do you want to just talk us through those?
Yeah, I mean, so the crux of the business, like I said, was born out of that maintenance planning for buildings, and then sort of each region we've worked in has brought in some sort of unique legislation around work health and safety, and that's sort of then led to an off-spin in asbestos and fire compliance and all these other avenues that we've gone, look, we truly, to our name, want to be solutions in whatever's needed in this industry. So if it's something we can start up and be doing to take that compliance monkey off a client's back, absolutely, that's our goal. So really big in the H&S space. Recently just been helping with the WA clients over there. They've just brought in a new act, so we wrote advisory notes for the government bodies, for the industry, etc. Really passionate about that side of things. The asbestos is big. I know I did some stats recently for a client. We've done just close to 20,000 asbestos surveys. So 20,000 buildings with asbestos in that we've gone through and ID'd where it is and what you need to do, how do you keep it safe, etc. Again, because that's something that BC owners don't understand. They go, guys, you're liable if I come onto your site and you've got some shit fibro lying there, and if that's asbestos and you've exposed me to that, that's a problem that you guys can be sued and held liable for now. So we do a lot in that space. We're big in contractor compliance monitoring as well. So you can't send just your average tradie to do electrical work. You can't just have the handyman get on the roof for the sake of it. So we try and monitor all those permits, licenses, insurances that even you guys as organising work orders, and the BC managers are organising work orders to ensure that you're only using the suitably qualified people. So to give you an idea, we have about 70,000 trades under monitoring at the moment.
Just in solutions and engineering?
Yeah, as our firm. Shit. So it's an off-spin of the business called ARM Contractor Compliance. So it's advise, revise, minimise is the whole purpose behind it. And there's just over 70,000 tradies on the books where each year we're making sure they're updating their licenses, the insurance renewals are done, work cover, all that sort of thing is ticked, so that each manager that is protected by our service, they know if I send them to site, they are suitably qualified to do that job. I'm not accidentally going to create a huge H&S issue because I've had the plumber do some electrical work and he's blown himself up,
I saw that badge on the branding, but I wasn't quite aware what it was about. But that makes a whole lot of sense. Like we do a similar thing, I guess, just for our business, where we make sure we get all their training certificates and liability insurance cover and all that sort of thing. But that's not for 70,000. We want to do it for like a few hundred, but not for 70,000.
It is. It's a big operation. What we try, I guess this was, again, a service born out of necessity in our industry and for clients going, look, I know this is a really difficult thing for you guys to do and do well. So we can offer it as a service. If you're a small body corporate management firm, you don't have the time or the money to invest in a person sitting there going, I've got to get all these insurance details before I can even send a work order. So that's sort of how it was born. And yeah, it's just really sort of spiraled into its own service, which has been really good.
You also do work in the fire protection or fire space as well?
Yep. Yeah, particularly in Queensland, which Queensland's the most heavily regulated fire region I've ever seen. And again, a lot of this stuff unfortunately comes from adversity, where there was a tragedy, people have died, and the government goes, oops, we should have seen that coming, we didn't, let's not let that happen again. So they bring in this legislation. So it's really heavily policed up there in Queensland. So we invest heavily in our fire services up there, and it's something that we might consider bringing to NZ with the BWOFs in the future as well.
Yeah, the BWOF one's interesting because I know that they don't really have that in Australia, but you guys have seen a little bit of a gap over here.
Yeah, we have. I think the marketplace is asking for another provider, and again, we want to be that one-stop shop going. We're already coming to site annually for the H&S, hopefully, as it is, to do a H&S audit. We're here every 3 years for the long-term plan. Let's throw in these BWOFs while we're already here. That means your lovely old ladies that meet us at the gate have to just meet one specialist, let them in, do their thing, rather than you're trying to organise all these different trades just to tickle your compliance boxes. So we want to centralise that, yeah.
Do you get good uptake about people like taking all of the services? Because in my mind, I think I'd be happy with that, just to go all of them. But I know there are people out in the market that go, oh, we want to get a different provider from each. And I can understand that, but I'm like, mate, whatever makes it easier. Is it a popular model?
It is, and I think it's such an interesting one. I mean, particularly in NZ, there's a lot of, friendships in the industry and people that have been working with each other for decades, absolute decades. So I think a lot of loyalty to some of those companies, which I just think is amazing, and we're not there to sort of take that. But there is then that other side of things where I think convenience trumps that conflict of interest at times. Do you know what I mean? So yes, some people go, oh, we can't have them do the safety audit and then the long-term plan, because they're going to say, fix up some of these safety issues using the long-term plan, and shove extra costs in. But I think we're all at a point now, particularly post-COVID, where the reliance on trades and labour is just getting harder and harder. So if people go, oh, geez, fuck, if they can do both, just get it done. Really don't care. And to the effect that in a few of our regions, we're actually looking at starting up just a small handyman business to do the jobs that the tradies won't come and quote. So, you can't get people out to come quote a $300 job. We'll just go, we're on site safety, we measured it up here. If you want it done, it's $250, let us know.
That's an interesting outcome of the construction cycle, I think, because when construction's booming, no one wants to do maintenance.
That's it.
When construction starts to tail off, they're all like, shit, we need a maintenance company now.
That's it.
Just to do the little jobs that keep things ticking over. One thing I was going to ask about was the state set up in Oz with the 7 states, whatever it is. We're not the 8th state, by the way. Yet. Maybe one day. You guys need us for the rugby thing.
This is it. Otherwise, we've got no chance of winning, man. We need your players.
But do you think that state model? Because I know that there's differences in every state with rules and stuff. Do you think that's a hindrance, or do you think there's actually advantages of having different perspectives on things?
It is the biggest pain in the ass, man. I said that since I sort of started in this role. I love that NZ is just, you got state. You don't have state. You're missing that state component that Australia has. So you guys have your local councils, and then you have that federal or that national legislation that filters down and just gets done. In Australia, we've got a National Work Health and Safety Act, to give you an idea. We've still got 2 states that chose not to adopt it. So it was the idea being, we're going to have one system, everyone knows. So if you work in one state, you know the rules in another state. And then it got vetoed by a couple of states that just went, can't be stuffed. And Victoria is one of them, which is a massive population base of Australia. They just went, stuff it, we're not following this. We've got our own. It's like a 1990-something act, that'll do.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
It's a pain in the ass, man. I think if you can, particularly in what we do, and you want service providers, you want owners that live in body corporate buildings to understand where they live in New South Wales is going to be the same in Queensland in terms of how it's run, its regulations, etc. It shouldn't be you have to do a course each time you move or you invest in a property interstate. Just to understand what you're responsible for, what you're liable for, how are my outgoings calculated, etc. I think it's a poor model.
Because I mean, if you had a business that was like nationwide, fuck, that'd be horrific to be able to. You'd have to do 7 different. You guys do, but do you think that would probably some people would probably think, I'll just stick to my state rather than branching out and growing their business and that sort of thing. It'd be hard to do that.
I think it is prohibitive actually for a number of providers, particularly if your core model doesn't focus around that real, I guess, getting into the nitty gritty of legislation. And I mean, our core business is helping interpret that for our clients and go, we can tick all these boxes for you. This is how much it is. This is the report at the end of the day. But yeah, if you're working in construction or some of those industries where your focus is the physical work on the buildings and trying to keep your head around the different requirements, even work cover, like to have cover for your employees on site and things like that changes state to state. You've got to have some of your guys, like we do as well, our building inspectors are covered under one state, then we got to do them under a new state, and then someone moves states, you got to transfer all their stuff. It's just
a nightmare.
At one stage in Australia, it was that ridiculous that you couldn't get a train from Queensland to New South Wales because they built the train tracks different widths because they left it to statesmen to go run your own rail system.
Oh, that's fucking terrible. It's bad enough going to that airport in Coolangatta and there's the 1 hour difference or whatever it is.
At one end of the runway, you're in New South Wales, and when you touch down, you're now in Queensland. That's bullshit.
It's taken an hour to get from one end of the runway to the other, pretty much. Fuck. Mate, that's one thing I don't sort of envy about Australia. So in that regard, coming to New Zealand to setting this business up in New Zealand, was it pretty easy, pretty straightforward? Were there different challenges?
I think what made it sort of easy for us was going, okay, look, the actual core product, this maintenance planning work, this health and safety work, we've done in Australia for many years. So we're not new to that. The buildings and the way that they construct these buildings are relatively similar. What was new was just getting ourselves familiar with the legislation, the way things get done in terms of owners choose to vote for things. The biggest challenge I actually find with what we do, and particularly people investing in body corps in New Zealand, is the lack of availability of finance to get work done on a body corporate level.
Right.
So we can come to site every 3 years and go, guys, you've got $1 million worth of maintenance coming up. Your levies need to be X amount. If they truly cannot fund that, or they vote those levies down each year because they just can't afford to be doing it, they don't really have that option of finance. And I know there's some great guys that have just sort of emerged in the industry really trying to get that going, and it's just been something that the BC industry and NZ has needed for a very long time. Yeah, because traditional finance institutions here in NZ don't understand lending to a body corporate is actually incredibly safe. That building doesn't go anywhere. It's an entity. It can't go bankrupt. At the end of the day, it's a debt to the owners. So worst case scenario in the bank size is we got to make all these owners sell. You get a court order. They all sell out. The profit or the revenue for selling out pays our mortgage off when all the new people buy into the building, so it's incredibly secure.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of our banks are owned by Australia now anyway. So back in the 80s, they were all bloody sold out. Mod Finance they've started working over here. Do you know much about them in Australia?
Not so much in Oz, actually. Again, these were guys, so I know I've met with Rick a couple of times, great bloke, and he was ex-Macquarie, so he very much understood the lending model. This is, he saw it as, again, guys, this is so secure. There's no risk really with lending to body corporate in that space of never getting your money back. So he actually saw the need in New Zealand. It's not something they focus on in Oz because it's well covered with all the other institutes over there doing it. So I think it's a great move they've done by coming to NZ to offer that solution and focusing it around construction loans rather than traditional mortgage sort of finance. Do
you think is there any learnings that you guys, because obviously you bring a model to New Zealand, Aussie's a lot more established industry over there. Has there been any things from New Zealand that you've kind of learned and taken back to Australia that have worked or been beneficial? Like, I don't know what they might be, but has there been anything you've gone, shit, that's actually pretty good, we could do that back in Oz?
What's been interesting in my role is I've had a few chances now to do some advisory work with parliament bodies over there. So what I tend to find, and what I tell my team is you go, NZ, yes, whilst it was behind in some aspects of the Australian or the US body corporate market and unit titles, etc., that's given the NZ market and the legislators a great chance to look at what has worked and what hasn't and then adapt the legislation to suit. What I'm finding now is I'm sort of referencing New Zealand legislation going, guys, it works so well over there, you need to bring in the requirement to plan for 30 years, or you need to bring in the requirement to review this stuff every 3 years because, hello, COVID, your plan's out of date after a couple of years if you haven't got accurate, up-to-date figures, So in that respect, I'm finding that NZ has learnt really well by sort of sitting back and going, okay, that worked well, that was shit house, let's do a blend of these two options. And set the legislation from that sort of position. works really well now to take it back to them. Recently in Queensland, discussing a similar sort of thing around terminating schemes when they get too old, people can't be bothered to maintain them, and sort of focusing on at the NZ approach, what New South Wales has done, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because we went to a presentation thing in Oz in February. A few years back, we'd gone to a similar sort of thing over there and found that we felt, shit, we're quite a way behind what's going on here.
Yeah.
February, we're like, oh shit, we're actually starting to inch ahead in a few bits and pieces. I won't go into the detail of them, but it was surprising to hear our Australian counterparts say, oh, you guys do that so much better in New Zealand, and it was quite refreshing for us.
Yeah, even to the point, a really clear difference I find in the work we do is in New Zealand, they've basically gone, this is from a work health and safety point of view, every single body corporate, doesn't matter what it's used for, if it's just 2 units side by side, whatever, is a PCBU. They treat it as like a corporate entity. Whereas in Australia and some other regions, they've sort of gone, oh, look, you could be, you might not be. If you're purely residential, we might give you some sort of benefit of the doubt in that space, to the effect that they've literally used the words in legislation, a residential body corporate may not be taken to be a PCBU. So it's just absolutely nuts. Whereas NZ just went, guys, you're responsible for safety of people coming to site. You're treated as a corporate entity. You need insurance. Let's get on with it,
Yeah. It seems to be a bit more black and white than that.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. We're talking before about a usual day for you, and you mentioned before that you spend a fair bit of time in airports.
Yep.
Tell us about your travel schedule for the past year.
Mate, I flew in yesterday, Brisbane to Auckland. That was my 57th flight for the year. So by Christmas, just before New Year's, I round out at 60 flights this year, which has been phenomenal. It's been a bit of a combination of we had an amazing guy who worked for us for 17 years, just went, okay, it's time to call it. Travel's getting a bit much. He wanted to focus on a few other things as well. So that sort of left us in this gap, which everyone's faced with staff. Where do we get, the skilled resources straight in? And when you do get them, it's that massive training curve. So that sort of led to me having to pick up a bit more this year, as well as opening up new regions like Perth and WA, and doing a bit in the Pacific Islands and things like that. But a regular day for me is catch-ups sort of like this with clients, going, let's sit down, have a coffee, a beer, have a chat about what you do, how we can help, rather than it being just a true sales presentation going, look, we've been doing this for a while, we do it for this many buildings, for this many clients, would love to extend that to you guys, and let us take care of it, so that it's not something you got to think about.
What was that total? You mentioned a number before, or maybe in that email, about the total number of clients and units or something. It was quite phenomenal.
Yeah, so since inception, we've worked with 150,000 buildings. Most of that are body corporate. We do obviously some commercial real estate stuff, some resorts, things as well. But 150,000 buildings now, and we've done over 1.7 million reports.
Wow.
Yeah, so we are the largest compliance report provider in the Southern Hemisphere. So we're looking at even expanding into South Africa and regions like that in coming years as well. But it's a phenomenal database. It's a phenomenal amount of buildings that we've been to, and it's through that we use to even train our guys, going, okay, let's look at what's the common issues in buildings. What do we look for? What are the costings for some of these things? We obviously all try and stick to a construction index, but we've also got that practical knowledge going, in this region, Nelson, for example, we know we've got to add X amount more to this, because you just cannot get materials there unless you can afford to pay double the price. So that brings that experience along as well.
Yeah, because in a lot of ways you're a data business, really. The amount of, because we see these plans and they're full of numbers, and they're full of dollar signs and all this sort of thing, and line items about every sort of broken down asset in the building and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of data there that you guys can use to. You can almost start to predict trends, you probably do, or see where things are going with building technology and all that sort of thing. Do you guys use data quite a bit?
Yeah, it has, and we it's funny, we've been having sort of leadership conversations over the last sort of year about how we can use that data even better in terms of predictive analysis of what the buildings are going to need in future years, which buildings are coming up for major projects. So we might have been on the building site, say 5 years ago, and we knew that actually in 2024 this building's going to be due to be painted. What can we do with that information, that data? Should we be going to the BC manager going, guys, I know you got to do this building next year, get it painted. Do you want us to go source the quote for you? And then we can go over chat with painters going, hey, some qualified leads here, if you want to get this work, can we work with you guys? Can we have some sort of partnership? Again, to try and take away some of that hassle for the body corporate managers.
Yeah. That's that database is massive, eh? Like, you look at any business of scale ends up having a big database, and it's what they can do with that information. I mean, like you guys probably plug that into some sort of AI and bloody solutions in AI. There you go.
Yeah.
And have it pump out some bloody ideas or facts and figures and stuff like that. So
it is. I mean, it's amazing too. If you look at it in context too, obviously we're not building managers or body corporate managers, but if you look at the largest body corporate firm in Australia has about 300,000 units under management. Well, we've got 150,000 buildings in our database that the average number of units per building is about 10.
Wow.
So we're sitting on about 1.5 million units worth of data and information about what's happening. So it is a phenomenal resource there that we are certainly looking at tailoring it again to go, okay, how can we be of better service? How can we be more predictive when maintenance is going to be due? We're doing a lot of data analysis now with safety reporting as well, going, what are we seeing? What are the trends? Why do we go to every third site and people don't have handrails, or the stairs don't have, highlighting so that grandma doesn't fall over on the way down, and try and work our educational platform around that as well. We do a lot of the education stuff. We speak at a lot of events, and to be able to use some of those stats at those events and try and protect bodies corporate and managers from being sued and prosecuted over simple shit. I think that's going to be really useful to us as well, to see those trends through that safety reporting data.
Oh, massively. And they say information is power. So, it's a fairly strong position to come from. You go, well, actually, we're referencing 1.5 million units here, so we kind of know what we're talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
You mentioned before about working in the Pacific Islands. Like, that must be an even more interesting, because, everyone goes to Fiji, you go to bloody Rarotonga, wherever, and you know that the building practices up there are different.
Yes.
And so what are the challenges when you go and try and sell these plans to them? Are they as receptive, or is you see the buildings are not as good as New Zealand or Australia, or what?
That's it. I mean, it's interesting. It's something we've only sort of just launched and started, and it was actually born out of a couple of Kiwi clients, like actual unit owners. One was a chairperson saying, hey, I'm also involved in this resort in Danaru in Fiji. Would you guys be interested in coming over and, we need this long-term plan model brought to this resort, or we need it brought to this hostel, whatever it is, and going, it works really well for BC, and honestly, a resort's not run too dissimilar to a BC. We got to plan the maintenance, we got these accounts, we have to get spending approved by the board, So that was sort of our catalyst into doing that sort of thing. We went, geez, you know what, there could be a decent market in this going. Again, a building's a building. We know how to do this maintenance planning. It's a bit more labour intensive. We actually have to go into each unit and go, okay, what are your 400 resort units, this complex? We need 400 fridges. We need 400 TVs. It's almost a shopping list for the resort too, to go in 8 years' time, we're going to replace absolutely everything, and they go hit up a big retailer and try and get that bulk discount.
But no one is complaining about having to go to the islands. I'll do that survey. I'll take one for the team.
It's been a struggle. We're almost using it as a reward sort of thing. Going, you've done an awesome year. Please, would you mind going to this? It's a well-paid job, and add a couple of days. Just don't come back for the week, and we'll fly you home on the Sunday, sort of thing.
Yeah, cool, man.
So it's a good incentive.
That is cool, and I mean, like you said before, you can replicate the model. You can go around the world with it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So you start looking. What's close by. What's big markets that are close by. Go up into Asia or whatever.
Yeah, we've thought about Asia. We were having a stint in the US for a while there as well. The US market, geez, that's an interesting one. I mean, it's a behemoth of corporate businesses over there, and the reason we sort of didn't truly enter it at the time was there was a massive corporate entity that managed something like 3 million units over there. It was just absolutely massive, and the model, if you wanted to be a trade or contractor for them, was that they would buy you out and you'd continue to work, and it just didn't sort of gel with what the company, what our company direction looked like. Yeah. But in saying that, we did Dubai for a number of years. We did work in Canada. Pretty much like you said, anywhere that there's a building that needs to be maintained and an obligation to do so, we can come in and go, well, let's plan it out. What are you going to need to spend over the next 5, 10, 30 years, Yeah.
Well, we all know how much maintenance these buildings require.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of our job, is dealing with people like yourselves to get information in order to present to our owners and say, here's what the experts are saying.
Yeah.
Best practice for your building, and they make decisions based on that information. So the better their information is, the better their decision is. A huge part of our role is doing that.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, that's certainly you guys fulfilling that fiduciary duty too, to go, look, we think you need to have an expert in, or you need to get this looked at, or that balcony is a bit dodgy at the moment, etc. So you guys have that obligation too, as part of running these or maintaining these buildings through your own business practice, to sort of encourage owners to do that. But it's important that the committee members understand they've got a similar duty, that fiduciary duty to go, okay, act in the best interest of the body corporate, not my wallet for this week. It's what actually does the body corporate need to get done. Am I suitably qualified myself to go, oh yeah, that's $50,000 for the driveway next year, or should I really be getting an expert in? And what was great in this last round of updates to the Unit Titles Act is they said any building more than 10 units or more, you have to involve a suitably qualified professional, or you have to vote that down by special resolution. So again, that's the intention from the government, going, guys, don't try and do this sort of stuff yourself. Don't just on a chalkboard write up, let's just throw $100,000 in a year and we should be right. It's actually get someone in and do a proper plan and take responsibility for it.
Man, I used to cringe and at body corporates, sometimes not even the smaller ones, where someone on the body corporate would be like, oh, I used to be a quantity surveyor, I'll do the plan. So, oh, for God's sake, just don't, because if you fuck that plan up, it's on you, buddy, and you ain't insured for that.
Here's that grenade, we'll just take the pin out, you just keep holding that for a while until it goes off, because that's what you're sitting on. You're sitting on so much liability without indemnity insurance, going, what to save, I mean, some of the biggest schemes we've done are still only less than $5,000 worth of work spread across upwards of 200-300 owners. Small schemes, a couple $100, and they're wanting to take that much liability and do it themselves. So I just think it's phenomenal.
No thanks.
And again, even to take on that liability, that's still not in the best interest of the body corporate collectively, which is why the government's brought in that need to vote the 75% if you do it yourself, which rarely do you get 3/4 of owners go, we'll take the liability, let's do it.
Oh, it's just too risky, and you're playing around with a lot of other people's money and investment too. So
it's that emotion word again too, isn't it? Then
it absolutely is. And like we said, that's when people's decision making can be affected by emotion, but for very good reason. It's their number one asset, or their home, or whatever. So let's keep the information third party and accurate and
and then it's protected too. If we make a mistake, we've got the indemnity insurance. There's a recourse path there to go, okay, well, something wasn't planned as it should have been, there's damages that can be sued for, here's the money, let's fix the building, versus those owners that sort of have that head in the sand approach. They've got no recourse. And the irony of it too is those owners go, again, that's why we've got insurance. And it's like, no, insurance, if they can clearly see you didn't maintain your roof, or it's full of leaves before we've got the next downpour of rain, they're not paying out that water leak claim. Again, insurance is there for an actual true insurable event when something has happened to the building that was unforeseen and couldn't be planned for. That's then when insurance goes, no worries, here's your money for it. But lack of maintenance, they're just going to laugh at you and up your premiums next year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good advice, and hopefully some people listen to this and actually sort of either go, yes, that's why we have a proper plan, or shit, we better get a proper plan. I'll be super surprised if a body corporate doesn't have an actual proper long-term maintenance plan by now. It was a bit of a slow uptake there at the start, but everyone now has a long-term plan. Most of them now are starting to fund to some degree, because when they first came out, they're like, you got to have a plan, but you can opt out of funding it, which I thought was just batshit crazy. Well, what's the point? It's these things cost money. The more you put away, and it's like KiwiSaver or whatever, retirement saving. If you put it away in the background, it just adds up, and it's not so much of a fright.
It's so much better as a position as a body corporate if it comes around painting's due next year, that you guys can be talking about what colour we're going to paint it, versus shit, where are we going to find all this money that we had not planned or not put away over 10 years, as well. So it's good. Again, the intention of that legislation change that's taken effect this year is that the body corporate has to vote each year, do they still want to stay unfunded? So they've said each year you need to make a motion in the agenda if you don't have a long-term maintenance fund, and you have to review that each year, so that there's the chance that hopefully each year they might overturn that decision and establish one. So again, that's intention, is the way we would view that from the government, going, guys, you need to start putting your money away,
Yeah, absolutely. What do you got planned for the rest of your trip while you're in New Zealand?
Mate, bit on. Scans is holding an end-of-year function, which we were very happy to co-sponsor. So we're sponsoring that event, taking some great clients over to Waiheke Island, actually, which will be good. Yeah, for a bit of fun over there.
Yep.
Bit of a lunch. But otherwise, this trip for me at this time of year is very much, it's a thank you to all the clients. Thanks for a great year. Really appreciate your business. Thank you for the ability to sit down and just have a chat, throughout the year. You guys make time for us. We try and provide great and useful information, but it's all made easy when you've got the owners of the business saying, yep, come in, see the staff, So it's very much a thank you trip, this one. Yeah.
Well, mate, that's probably a good point to wrap it up.
Nice.
And just thank you for coming in and having a yarn to us about it. And be good to sit down again and just get an update in 6 months' time.
We can see how it goes. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thanks for your time, man.
Pleasure.
Cheers, mate.